The hot sun burned above the alien arena, casting shadows across the sharp metal walls. The ground was dry, cracked, and soaked with old blood. Screams and cheers echoed from the high stone seats where hundreds of alien nobles sat, their eyes focused on the center of the arena. This was no place for mercy. It was a place of death. In the middle of the sand stood a human alone. His name was Jack Monroe, a former soldier from Earth captured during a failed exploration mission. His clothes were torn, and his body bore cuts from past beatings. He held a rusty, broken sword, barely the length of his arm. Around him, alien guards laughed. "He's going to die in one hit," one shouted. "Look at him, he can barely stand." Jack didn't speak. His blue eyes scanned the arena carefully. He was outnumbered, outmatched, and out of luck. But he had something no one here understood: survival. Up in the royal balcony, Queen Zalara sat with a proud smirk on her face. Her long, dark robes shimmered with gold threads. On both sides, her alien maidens whispered and giggled as they looked down at the human. To them, this was entertainment. Another weak creature tossed into the ring. "He'll beg before the first strike," said one maid, "or wet himself," said another. But Zalara raised a hand. Silence fell. Then, a large door opened across the arena. Metal chains dragged along the ground as the champion stepped out. He was a monster. Over 8 feet tall, thick with armor, his skin looked like burning stone. 2 glowing red eyes stared at Jack like a hungry beast. In his hand, he carried a massive blade as long as Jack was tall. The crowd roared in excitement. Let the final challenge begin. The royal announcer shouted, a bell rang. The champion moved fast, faster than any large creature should. He swung his blade with a roar. Jack ducked, the wind of the blade brushing past his face. He rolled on the ground, sand scratching his skin, and came up to his feet again. The crowd expected him to run, but Jack didn't move back. He charged forward. Gasps rose from the aliens. No one had ever done that. Jack's broken sword struck the champion's leg. It did little, just a scratch, but it made the monster pause. Jack jumped back before the giant blade came crashing down again, shaking the arena floor. For 10 minutes, the two fought. Jack ducked, rolled, jumped, and stabbed. His body moved with speed and strategy. The champion, though powerful, was slow and used to winning easily. He had never fought someone like Jacko, human trained in war, pain, and survival. Up above, Queen Zalara narrowed her eyes. Her smile was gone. Her hand gripped the edge of her throne. "This is impossible," she whispered. Her maids had stopped whispering. Their eyes were wide, glued to the human. Jack's movements grew sharper. He started predicting the champion's attacks. He waited, watched, breathed, and then it came the opening. The champion lifted his blade high to bring it down on Jack. But Jack didn't move back. He ran forward, sliding under the monster's legs, spinning behind him. In one fluid motion, he leaped onto the champion's back. Using his broken sword like a dagger, he drove the blade in two. The monster's neck, joint right. Where the armor was weakest, there was a terrible scream. The champion turned to grab Jack. But Jack twisted the blade deeper, and with one final roar, he sliced down hard. Hey! Spray of glowing alien blood filled the air. The champion dropped to his knees, and then fell split in half. Silence, the entire arena, froze. The crowd sat still. Even the guards looked unsure. Jack stood, chest rising and falling, covered in dust and blood. His broken sword fell from his hand. From the royal balcony, Queen Zalara stood slowly. Her face was unreadable, shocked, confused, maybe even angry. "No one has ever killed my champion," she whispered. Her maids looked at each other, speechless. And then, from deep within the palace walls, a voice echoed from the archives. "He has done the impossible." The law is clear. The queen turned sharply. "What? Law?" she asked. The advisor stepped forward. "Pale. The ancient law of honor. If a challenger defeats the queen's champion, he is to be rewarded with the queen's hand and her royal maids. He owns her household." Gasps rose again. Jack looked up toward the balcony, unsure what was happening. He only knew one thing. He had survived, but what came next? He wasn't ready for it. Jack Monroe stood in the center of the arena, his breathing heavy, the broken sword still dripping with glowing alien blood. The champion's body lay behind him, split and silent. But the real storm was just beginning, high above. Queen Zalara's sharp eyes stared at him, her hands clenching the stone arms of her throne. The arena, once full of shouting nobles and laughing soldiers, was now frozen in stunned silence. No one moved, no one spoke. The impossible had just happened and no one knew what came next. Jack had expected death. Instead, he was facing something. "Stranger," a soft, uneasy murmur began to spread through the crowd. Royal guards surrounded the arena, unsure whether to kill Jack or protect him. The queen's voice sliced through the air like a blade. "Bring him to the palace," she ordered. Now, two guards rushed forward, unsure of what to do. Jack raised his hands slowly, as if to show he was not resisting. His eyes met the queen's cold, unreadable, yet not filled with hate. Not yet. The palace halls were silent as Jack was escorted in chains, but not like a prisoner. The guards walked with confused steps. They weren't told to harm him, only bring him. Whispers followed him. From the shadows. Maids peeked from behind curtains. Advisors stood aside in silence at the heart of the palace, in the throne room of polished black stone and glowing purple banners. Queen Zalara sat on her throne, legs crossed, face unreadable. Her maids stood to her right, dressed in soft silks, their expressions a mix of fear and curiosity. None of them spoke. Jack was brought before her. "I should have you executed," she said calmly, voice like ice. Jack said nothing. His face was bruised, cut, but his eyes didn't show fear. They showed the same quiet strength that had ended. "Her champion. But," she continued, her fingers tapping the armrest slowly, "we have a problem." A small, elderly alien stepped forward from the shadows. His long gray robes marked him as the royal archivist, keeper of old laws and ancient knowledge. He bowed low to the queen. "Your Grace, the law is very clear." Zalara raised one sharp brow. "Remind me." The archivist opened a small hologram scroll and read aloud, voice trembling, "In the event that a queen's champion is defeated in open arena combat, the victor shall be offered all rights of union over the queen and her house, including any royal attendants or concubines, as compensation for bravery and honor." Silence. Everyone stared at Jack. Queen Zalara stood slowly, her long cape trailing behind her. "This law hasn't been used in 900 years. The archivist nodded. "Because no one has ever won, until today." Jack finally spoke, his voice calm but tired. "I didn't come here to take anyone. I just didn't want to die." Zalara's gaze narrowed, "And yet, here you stand, holding a law that makes you the most dangerous man in this palace." Her maids stirred uneasily. One of them, a silver-haired girl named Tauri, leaned toward another and whispered, "Does that mean he owns us?" Another maid whispered, "Only if the queen honors the law." But Zalara was not one to back away from duty even if her pride screamed against it. "You will stay in the East Wing," she told Jack coldly. "Under watch. You will not leave without permission. You will not touch any maid without request." And you will wait until I decide what to do with you. Jack nodded. Fine, but I won't act like I own anything, especially not people. Her jaw clenched, but she didn't reply. Later that night, Jack was given a large room made of dark stone and warm lighting. It was far nicer than the cages he had lived in before. A soft robe was folded on the bed. Clean water filled the washing basin. He sat quietly, staring out the window into the alien night sky. The door creaked. He turned. One of the Queen's maids stepped in Telri. The same silver-haired girl who had whispered earlier. She carried a tray of food, her eyes down, but she seemed nervous. You fought well, she said softly, placing the tray on the table. Jack nodded. Thanks. She looked at him. Do you really not want any of us? Jack blinked. What? Law says we belong to you now, she said. You could claim any of us, even the Queen. Jack shook his head. That's not why I fought. I just wanted to live. Telri stared at him. You're not like the others. Before she could say more, another maid appeared at the door, eyes wide. The Queen is coming. Telri quickly bowed and ran out. Jack stood up, unsure what was about to happen. The door opened. Queen Zalara entered alone. She stood tall, but her expression was unreadable. She walked up to him, close enough to feel her presence. If I let this law stand, she said quietly, you will have power no outsider has ever held. But know this, human. If you hurt even one of my people, I will kill you myself. Jack looked her in the eye. I'm not here to hurt anyone. She stared at him for a long moment. Then she turned and walked away. But as she left, one of the other maids whispered in the hallway. He may not want power, but power seems to follow him anyway. The palace was silent that night, but inside Queen Zalara's heart, a storm was building. She stood alone in her private chambers, looking out the crystal window at the moonlit city below. Her long cloak was gone, and her golden crown sat quietly. On a nearby table, without her usual royal armor, she looked almost human, almost fragile, but her mind was sharp, angry, confused. How could one human defeat her champion? How could one law threaten her throne? And worst of all, why did she feel something stir in her chest when she looked into his eyes? She growled and shook the thoughts away. In the east wing, Jack sat on the floor of his room. He had refused the large bed and instead leaned against the cold wall, staring at the tray of untouched food. He wasn't hungry. His body still ached from the fight. But his mind was elsewhere. What was this place? He had survived a monster, but now he was stuck in a palace full of quiet danger. The Queen could end him with one word. Her guards watched his every move. Her maids looked at him like he was both hero and threat. He didn't want power. He didn't want to claim anyone. He just wanted peace, a place to breathe. But he knew peace was the one thing this palace didn't offer. Later that night, the door opened again. No guards, no warning. Queen Zalara walked in. This time, she wore a deep red robe, loose and flowing, her hair tied back. There was no crown, no army behind her. Just her. A woman strong, proud, but also curious. Jack stood quickly. Your Majesty sit, she said. He did. She walked slowly around the room, eyes on everything. The sword resting by the wall, the untouched food, the simple bedding. You're not enjoying your reward? She asked, voice cold but calm. Jack shook his head. I don't see this as a reward. She raised an eyebrow. Then what do you see it as? A mistake, he said. I didn't know about the law. Didn't ask for it. She paused, studying his face. Most men would have taken advantage of it, demanded my hand, commanded my maids, bragged in the halls. Jack looked her in the eye. I'm not most men. Her lips tightened. Something flickered behind her eyes. She walked to the window and looked out. When I was a girl, I watched my mother cry as nobles forced her to marry a general who won a war for our empire. She never loved him. She died young. They called it heart failure. I called it soul failure. Jack stayed quiet. Zilara turned toward him. You may not be cruel, Jack Monroe, but you are still a danger. You've shaken the foundation of our customs. If I don't follow the law, I lose the respect of my council. If I do, I lose myself. Jack stood. Then changed the law. She gave a bitter laugh. Easier said than done. Silence grew between them. Then Jack said, softly, I don't want to own you, or anyone. I'd rather earn your respect than force your hand. For the first time, Zilara looked surprised, genuinely surprised. No man had ever said that to her. The next morning, rumors had already spread across the palace. He didn't touch her, whispered one maid. He gave back the crown rights, whispered another. He even cleaned his own room. Someone added with shock. The maids began to watch Jack more closely, not as a master, but as something different. He greeted them kindly, never ordered, never bragged. He asked questions, listened to their stories. He even laughed with the kitchen girls for the first time in years. The palace halls echoed with light voices, gentle smiles, and soft laughter in the training yard. Jack found an empty corner and began practicing. Though tired, he moved with focused slow swings, rolls, footwork. He trained not to impress, but to stay ready. Queen Zilara watched him from her tower. She saw his sweat, his scars, the discipline in each motion. She remembered her own training. Years ago, before the throne had turned her heart to stone, something inside her chest stirred again. Why? She whispered to herself. Why does this human not bow to greed like the others? She descended the stairs. Later that evening, Jack was resting when the door opened again. Zilara entered, this time with a wooden sword in hand. Jack stood. What's this? A test, she said. They stepped into the courtyard. Moonlight lit the stone floor. Without a word, Zilara attacked. Jack blocked. Strike, parry, step back, move forward. They danced not with anger, but skill. She was fast, trained, but Jack's reflexes were better. Their wooden swords clashed again and again. Sweat glistened on their faces. Their breath grew louder. Finally, Zilara stopped. She dropped her sword. You're not just strong, she said, panting. You're controlled, focused, human, but something more. Jack lowered his weapon. So are you. For a moment, the queen smiled. Not the cruel smile she wore in court. A real one. Small, honest. She stepped closer. You haven't earned my heart, she said. Not yet. Jack nodded. Then, I won't stop trying. She stared at him, and, for the first time, the queen didn't feel like she had to kneel. She just wanted to stay. The palace slept under the cold light of twin moons. Most of the guards had retired to the outer gates, where lanterns flickered weakly in the wind. The royal halls, once full of music and voices, now stood quiet. Curtains barely moved, and the only sounds were the soft whispers of night bugs beyond the garden walls. Inside his room, Jack Monroe finally allowed himself to rest. He lay on the floor, not the bed, with one hand on the hilt of a blunt training sword beside him. The palace was peaceful, but Jack never truly trusted peace. Not in a place where power shifted with every breath. He had seen the queen's changing gaze. He had felt the heat behind the kindness of her maids, and deep inside, something told him the fight wasn't over. He was right. A shadow slid across the balcony wall. Not another moved past the door like smoke. They had come, 5 assassins trained in silence. Their armor dark and soft, blades coated in alien poison that could stop a heart with one drop. They weren't soldiers. They weren't guards. They were ghosts sent to kill the human who had broken a law that was never meant to be followed. Inside the room, Jack's eyes opened. He didn't move. He listened, breathing, soft. Wrong, too many footsteps for an empty hallway, then Dash Creek. The door opened a crack. Jack grabbed his training sword and rolled behind the bed, just as a sharp dagger sliced the air where his throat had been a second ago. The assassin growled in surprise. Another entered from the balcony. Jack didn't wait. He kicked the table forward, flipping it at the intruder, then swung the wooden blade straight into the third assassin's knee as they came through the curtain. A scream rang out. The fourth attacker lunged with two knives. Jack blocked one with his arm, felt it cut deep, but used the pain to twist into a spin, knocking the assassin's head into the wall. Blood dripped from Jack's forearm, but his eyes burned with fire. He wasn't fighting to win. He was fighting to live. Down the hall, Talri, the silver-haired maid, had just left the queen's chamber after folding her robes for the next day. As she passed the East Wing corridor, she noticed something strange. The lights were out, completely dark, and then she heard it. Clang. Crack. A shout. Her eyes went wide. She ran. Jack was breathing hard now, his left arm bleeding, his foot twisted from dodging too many attacks. One assassin remained taller than the rest, blade longer, eyes glowing green under a thin mask. "You fight well," the assassin said, voice low. Jack grinned through the blood. "I aim to disappoint." They clashed. The assassin's blade moved fast, but Jack had learned in the arena timing beats strength. He waited, dodged, then slammed the wooden sword into the assassin's wrist, breaking the grip. The blade clattered. Jack pinned him to the floor just as the doors burst open. Queen Zalara stepped in, followed by guards and Talri behind her. Out of breath, she looked at the scene. Blood, broken furniture. 4 assassins down, one pinned by a bleeding human dot. Jack stood slowly, panting. "Your people are very welcoming. Us," she demanded. The pinned assassin smirked, asked the council. "They fear your law-breaking pet." She didn't hesitate. She drew her blade and ended him. That night, the queen called a meeting of her inner court. The council arrived in silence, some confused, some afraid. "There was an attempt on the human's life," Zalara said calmly. "Inside my walls, inside my palace." The nobles shifted uncomfortably. "If you wish to challenge me," she said coldly, "do it with words, not cowards' blades." An older noble stood. "Your Majesty, we only wished to protect your honor. He is an outsider. He holds dangerous rights now." Zalara's voice was sharper than ever. "He has earned every right with blood. If he wanted to rule, he could have already. But he chooses respect." The room fell silent. "He is not your enemy," she said, softer now, "unless you make him one." Later, Jack sat quietly in the garden, arm wrapped in bandages. Talri brought him hot tea, her hands shaking. "You could have died," she said. "I've almost died more times than I can count," Jack said softly. "But this place feels different. Like I'm not just fighting for myself anymore." Talri looked down. "We were afraid of you at first, but now some of us would die to protect you." Jack stared at her. He didn't know what to say. That night, Queen Zalara entered his room once again. No guards, no weapons. Jack stood. "More assassins?" "No," she said. "Only me." She stepped closer. "I ordered the champion to kill you," she confessed. "I thought you were just another brute, but you fought with honor. You refused to take what the law gave you, and tonight, you saved my people." Jack looked into her eyes. "Does this mean you trust me now?" Didn't answer with words. Instead, she reached out and touched his wounded hand, just lightly. "I don't trust easily," she whispered. "But you're making it." The morning sun bathed the palace in golden light. Birds with crystal feathers chirped in the high gardens. It should have been a peaceful day, but Queen Zelara's court was no longer at peace. Everything had changed since the human survived the arena, since he won the law, since he survived the assassins. Now, no one knew what was allowed, what was right, what would happen next. The nobles whispered behind closed doors. The guards watched, Tim too closely. But inside the palace walls, something unexpected was happening. The maids had started to choose sides, and more. They were choosing him. Jack Monroe woke up late that morning. His arms still ached, wrapped in clean bandages. The wound from the assassin's blade had been deep, but thanks to the maid's care, he would heal. He opened his eyes to the smell of sweet fruit. On the table beside him, someone had left a tray, a bowl of fresh sliced nectar fruit, a clean robe, and a folded note. He picked it up and read the words, "You're not our master, but maybe you are our protector." Jack smiled slightly. He had a guess who signed it. Talry, the silver-haired maid who always looked at him. With kind eyes dotted in the hallways, the maids moved in quiet waves carrying towels, cleaning armor, lighting incense in the queen's chambers. But now, they whispered a different kind of secret. He could have taken us all by law, but he didn't. He fights for us. The queen watches him every day now, even at night. Some of them blushed when he passed. Others stood straighter, prouder. For the first time, the human wasn't feared. He was respected. That afternoon, the queen called a private court meeting. Her trusted advisors, her captain of the guard, and her oldest maidens were present. Jack was summoned too, but not in chains. Not with guards behind him. He walked through the main hall as whispers spread behind his back like wind in tall grass. Queen Zelara sat on her throne, her golden robe wrapped tight around her. She looked calm, but something in her eyes burned. "You've been here long enough now," she said, staring down at Jack. "And the law still stands." Jack said nothing. "You could have taken power," she continued. "But you didn't. Still, my maids look at you with hope. That is dangerous." One of the councilmen interrupted. "Your Majesty, we must end this. Strip him of his rights. Break the law, if needed." "Our people," Zelara raised her hand. Silence. Then she turned to her maids, who stood quietly along the pillars. "Come forward," she said. 10 of her closest maidens stepped forward. Among them was Talry, head lowered. Zelara spoke loudly now. "You have all seen the human. You've spoken to him, served him, watched him fight, bleed, and protect you. By ancient law, he owns you all, unless you choose to step away." Gasps filled the hall. This had never been allowed before. A queen giving her concubines a voice. Zelara looked at her maids. "Speak. Are you afraid of him?" One maid stepped forward. "No, Your Majesty. Do you feel forced by him?" Another shook her head. "Never. Do you wish to stay under my command or stand beside him as equals?" Talry stepped forward now, eyes clear. "I wish to stand beside him, not as a gift, not as a reward, but as a choice." More maids followed. "I choose him. I feel safe when he walks the halls. He made this place feel alive again." Zelara's jaw tightened, not with jealousy, but with something else, something like respect. After the court dismissed, Zelara walked alone in the garden. Jack followed quietly behind, till they stood by the moonglass pond. She didn't look at him. "You're changing everything," she said. "I'm not trying to," Jack replied. "But maybe it needs to change." She looked up at him finally. Her eyes no longer sharp, but tired. When I became queen, I swore I'd never bow to love. Never let anyone inside my walls. She touched her chest, but you didn't use force. You used patience. And now even I don't know where I stand. Said softly, then stand with me, not under a law. Not under duty. Just as you. That evening, Jack sat in the maiden's garden. The air smelled of flowers and sweet dust. Several maids were there with Himtari among them. They told stories, laughed, and passed around soft fruit wine. One of the younger girls asked shyly, "Do you still think about Earth?" Jack nodded. "Every day. But this feels like a new world." Talri leaned closer. "Maybe it can be home." He didn't answer right away, but his smile said enough, high above them. Queen Solara watched from her window. She saw the way her maids leaned toward Jack, how their laughter returned, and for the first time in many years, she didn't feel like a queen in a cage. She felt like a woman on the edge of something real. She whispered to the night, "Air, maybe he didn't conquer us. Maybe he freed us. Hard not to." The palace was quiet again, but this time it wasn't the silence of fear. It was the calm after change. Queen Solara stood alone on the balcony of her private chamber, staring into the stars. The sky was full of slow-moving moons and glowing clouds. But her eyes didn't focus on them. She was remembering her childhood, the battles, the betrayal, the throne that had cost her everything. Behind her, the door creaked open gently. She didn't turn. "You're early," she said. Jack stepped inside, carrying a small wooden box. "You asked for me." "I did," she said, still facing the stars. "Do you know what this night is?" He shook his head. "No. It's the night my parents were murdered," she said softly. "I was 12. Jack's heart tightened. He hadn't expected that. "They called it an accident," she continued. "But everyone knew it was a power move. My own uncle ordered it. I was next in line, so they dressed me up, gave me a crown, and told me to smile." She finally turned to him. "No child should ever wear a crown." Jack said nothing, just listened. She stepped closer, her voice lower now. "I was trained to rule, not to feel, to punish, not protect. But these last few days, watching you with the maids, hearing them laugh again," she paused, "it reminded me of who I was. Before all this," Jack nodded. "You're still her. She's not gone. Just hiding." Solara looked into his eyes. "And what about you, human? What are you hiding?" They sat by the fire that night. Just the two of them. No guards, no throne. Just two people who had seen too much pain. Jack, finally, spoke. "I lost my brother on Mars Station." Solara blinked. "I didn't know humans lived on Mars." "Not anymore," Jack said. "He was a medic. We got caught in an ambush by alien raiders. I made it. He didn't." Solara watched him closely. "I've never forgiven myself," he added. "You shouldn't," she said. He looked up, surprised. "Because guilt is the only thing that keeps leaders honest," she continued. "I live with it too. Every day." She reached over and opened the box he had brought. Inside was a small carved bird wooden. Simple, delicate. "I made it during my time in the cells," Jack said. "When I thought I was going to die, I carved it with a spoon." Solara held it gently, her fingers brushing the tiny feathers. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Jack gave a sad smile. "I told myself, if I ever got out, I'd give it to someone who reminded me that the world can still be kind." She looked at him. Their eyes met. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. Later that night, Talri found Jack sitting in the quiet courtyard. Kayla silver, moonlight making his skin glow silver. "You were with her," she said gently. He nodded. She needed to remember who she was. Talri sat beside him. "You changed her. You changed all of us." "I didn't mean to," Jack said. "But you did." Talri hesitated, then asked, "Do you love her?" Jack paused. "I don't know," he said. "I admire her. I want her to be free." Talri smiled sadly. "Then maybe. That's what love really is." In her chamber, Queen Zalara placed the wooden bird beside her crown. She looked at it for a long time. Then, for the first time in years, she took off her royal necklace, the one that marked her as sovereign, and set it down. She didn't want to be a ruler tonight. She just wanted to be a woman. The next day, something unexpected happened. Zalara called a public gathering in the Great Hall. Jack stood beside her, not as a prisoner, not as a servant, but as a guest of honor. The nobles gathered, their faces tense. The maids stood tall. Proud Zalara raised her hand. "Today, I end the ancient law," she said. "No woman shall ever be claimed by combat again. No man shall ever be owned by victory." Gasps filled the room. One counselor shouted, "Then what of the human? What of your bond to him?" She turned to Jack, her voice steady. "He owns no one. He has earned respect. He has earned trust." Jack didn't speak. He simply bowed. And Zalara bowed back. A queen bowing to a human. That night, a bowls lit with soft lantern-stop music played in the distance. The air felt different, like a new era was beginning. Zalara sat beside Jack under the stars. "You made me remember who I was," she said, "and you made me hope again." Jack replied, "They didn't kiss, they didn't need to. They just sat, tethered side by side, not as ruler and subject, not as warrior and queen, but as two souls who had found peace in each other's pain." The palace gates opened wide as the drums of ceremony echoed across the city. Crowds of aliens, nobles, merchants, even beggars stood side by side for the first time in decades. All eyes were fixed on the center of the stone courtyard, where Queen Zalara stood tall under the twin suns. Her royal robe fluttered in the breeze, golden threads shimmering like fire. But it wasn't just her. The people had come to see. Standing beside her, in a dark tunic lined with silver, was Jack Monroe, the human. Once a captive, once a fighter in a blood arena. Now, something else, something more. Zalara raised her hand for silence. Her voice rang clear, calm, and strong. "Today, we leave behind a law born from conquest. A law that gave ownership through violence. A law that nearly made me a trophy." Gasps and murmurs spread through the crowd. "But I am no trophy," she continued. "And neither is he." She looked at Jack. "Jack Monroe did not claim me by force. He refused the power we gave him. He gave us laughter, trust, and reminded us what it means to choose." The crowd was silent. Then someone clapped, then another and another, until the air was filled with cheers. In the royal garden, later that day, away from the eyes of the nobles, the maids gathered around Jack. They wore soft colors, their hair done in elegant braids, flowers woven into the strands. Talri stepped forward, a smile lighting her pale face. "You freed us," she said. "Not with blades, but with kindness." Jack shook his head. "I didn't free anyone. You all chose to be more. I just gave you the space." One of the older maids, who once never spoke above a whisper, said with a proud voice, "We were concubines by law. Now we are women with names, with voices." Another whispered, "And some of us still choose you." Jack paused, heart thudding. I don't know if I can be that for everyone." Talri smiled softly. "You already are, not as a ruler, not as an owner, but as a man who listens. That's more than most kings ever do." That night, Queen Zalara found him in the moonlight garden. just where their story had truly begun. He stood quietly, looking at the stars, as if still unsure this peace was real. She walked up beside him. No guards. He joked. She smiled. Need. You're the safest thing in this palace now. They both laughed lightly, then silence. But it was a warm silence. Do you ever wonder? She asked softly, what might have happened if you had lost that arena fight? Jack nodded. Every night, and now. He turned to face her. Now I'm glad I didn't. Not because I lived, but because I met you. Zalara's breath caught. For someone who once ruled through fear, who was called monster, conqueror, an ice-hearted queen. This man spoke to her as if she were simply human. I never believed in love, she whispered. Jack stepped closer. Maybe that's because you were waiting for someone who didn't try to take it. The following day, a quiet ceremony was held in the inner circle of the palace. No large crowds, no titles. Just those who mattered. The queen, the maids, and the human. A small flame was lit in the center of the chamber, symbolizing unity. One by one, each maid placed a token in the fire ribbon stones. Flower symbols of their past roles as concubines. Zalara stepped forward last. She held her crown. Then she looked at Jack. I am still queen, she said, but if I am to walk forward with you, let it be as your partner, not your prize. Jack placed his old blade beside her crown, the same one he had used in the arena. I am no warrior anymore, he said. Let me walk beside you, not as a conqueror, but as a man who loves you. Then she took his hand. No royal music, no speeches, just two hands, held tightly. The flame flickered, and a new chapter began. Some time later, on a quiet evening in the high garden, Jack sat with Talri and a few of the other maids. They told jokes, shared stories of their youth, and spoke of things they once thought they could never want: freedom, love, hope. Talri looked at him and said, "Do you know what we talk about now when you're not around?" Jack raised an eyebrow. "Do I want to know?" She giggled. "We argue over who gets to teach the children your Earth games." He blinked. "Children," another maid chimed in. "Someday, not now. But we think about it." He smiled, a little nervous, and a little warm inside. From the royal balcony, Zalara watched the scene below. The man who had once split her champion in half now sat gently with the women her kingdom, once treated as decorations. She turned to her advisor. "Prepare a message to the outer provinces," she said. "Tell them the queen now shares her rule, and let them know what a human heart can do."